So good morning, everybody. It's nice to see you. My name is Louis Irving, and I am a faculty member in the College of Biology. Today's session is going to focus much more on how to make sort of the best application that you can. So it's going to focus largely on the personal statement, but I'm going to talk a little bit about other topics as well. Just to try and make sure you've got a full view of kind of what we're looking for, broadly speaking, from our applicants. So hopefully you can see my screen, and you can see a picture of one of our former students, Molly, who's enjoying a book about, I don't know, something. This was a picture we took a few years ago, just in the middle of campus. So application requirements. Now, if you go and you look through the application documents that Shoji-san is going to link to, then that will give you a full list of all the application requirements, and that's going to be like the technical specifications for applying. Now, I'm an academic rather than an administrator. The administrators, they really focus on the technical aspect of your application. So do you have all the documents that you need? Are those documents appropriate for being admitted to our university? But simply having those documents, is not enough. We have more applications than we have places available, and so it's important that your application is strong, right, in order to get a place. And that's true for most universities, of course. So your application requirements are going to be something like this. You're going to require a transcript or some form of test scores. So when you a transcript, okay, that's going to be your last 3 years. So that'll be this year plus the previous 2 years. So if you're currently in your final year of high school, you won't have your grades for you won't maybe have all your grades for this year yet. That's fine. But we do need your current year plus the 2 previous years. Maybe also some form of test score. Maybe you have, an SAT score or an ACT score, or some other form of standardized test. So we can accept pretty broadly, but we do need your last 3 years for your high school transcript. We're also going to look for a recommendation letter from a teacher. Okay. Now, in principle, it says it should be your high school principal, but in reality, it's better to get a letter of recommendation from a teacher who knows you well. So maybe your biology teacher, or your social sciences teacher, or your English teacher, whoever. Okay, somebody who knows you on an academic basis, who knows you a little bit personally, and you feel comfortable can write a nice letter for you. Now, in reality, when we receive these recommendation letters, they're not super important for us, to be really honest. If you have a very positive recommendation letter, that's going to look good for you, right? Maybe your teacher gives some details about your personality, or your passions, or your extracurricular activities, something like that. And we'll look at that, and we'll make a note about that. But teacher recommendations, they're not super important unless they're terrible, right? If your teacher says, you're a bad student, right? You don't turn up to class. That's that's one we would definitely pay attention. But otherwise, we tend to, look at them and we're interested in them, but they're not a thing that, make or break an application. And the reason for this is because teacher recommendations are very variable. If you look at, teacher recommendations from like a US high school, often they are, very, very, very enthusiastic. Yeah, this is the best student I've ever had in my whole teaching career, and your university will, fall to pieces if you don't accept them, kind of thing, right? If you get an application from, let's say, a West African high school, it will often say, this student is satisfactory. Their attendance is satisfactory. So they don't tend to be very enthusiastic. They tend to be very, kind of strict. So, it's not fair to try and judge people by, letters of recommendation. So they're good things, but, it's probably not going to get you a spot on our program by itself. The thing that will get you a spot on our program is this one, the personal statement. And this is what it really comes down to, is, you're applying to a specific program. So that could be biology or engineering or social studies or whatever, right? And what we want you to do is we want you to demonstrate for us sort of the importance of this subject to you. So if you tell me you're really passionate about biology, let's say, right? I'm a biologist, right? So if you tell me you're really passionate about biology, and you demonstrate that, you tell me about the things that interest you, that excite you, what you want to do with your career, then I'm gonna probably be interested in that, right? And I'm probably going to be interested in you. So the personal statement is one of those things that this is one of these ones that does make or break applications. Okay. Test scores, they are important. But at this point, you probably can't do anything about your test scores, right? What you did, last year, the year before, you've got those grades, you can't change them, right? But your personal statement is something that's in your control, right? You can either spend time on it, work on it, and write a good personal statement, or you can write a bad personal statement. And the difference between a good one and a bad one is accepted or rejected. So the personal statement is really important one. Financial plan, I'm going to talk about that later. Broadly, this just lets us know that you have talked this through with your parents, that you've got a plan in place, because 4 years at college is obviously you need to be able to support yourself through that time. An English test score, if you are from a non-native speaking country, or if your education was not in English, then you probably need an English test score. And again, this is kind of like the teacher recommendation. We're going to use this to judge, like, are you broadly capable of handling the course? But this is not one of these ones that's going to, make or break an application. This is basically just looking at you and saying, well, yes, your English is good enough. Then, we can go from there. And then a bunch of administrative stuff. As I mentioned, I'm not an administrator, I'm faculty. So I'm really interested in sort of the strategy of how you get into a program like ours. I'm not so much interested in, did you submit the right document? Does it have the right stamp on the right place? Okay. Shoji-san is very interested in that. But for me, it's kind of administrative stuff. So test scores. Broadly speaking, we don't care too much about your test scores, right? if you've got good scores, right? You've got a strong GPA, maybe you've got an SAT, and they're generally good. That's probably fine. We get applications from many different countries every year, and it's impossible to match them up. So if you've got someone who's got a 3.8 GPA from the US, right? Well, it depends, right? Because different schools in different regions grade in different ways. So a 3.8 from Palo Alto High School is very different than a 3.8 from a high school in rural Louisiana, right? They're already quite different from each other. But then what about when you've got somebody who's got A levels or somebody who's got a West African certificate of secondary education? You can't rank people based on grades. It's just not possible. So we will look at your grades and we will say, you know what, this person has done, well within their system. So for me, if you are an A student, it doesn't matter if you're an A student from the US, from Nigeria, from, the Philippines, from Vietnam. If you're an A student, you're an A student to me, okay? So provided that your grades are good, then we don't really care. If your GPA is 3.82 and someone else's is 3.83, I don't care, right? It's going to be who writes the best personal statement, basically, okay? So, as I say, applications from many different countries, so direct comparisons, just not possible for us. Now, we don't publish score statistics. Some other universities do. I think Nagoya does, but we don't. But I would suggest that you look at comparable institutions. For me, when I'm looking at comparable institutions, I would look at somewhere like Lancaster University in the UK, which is pretty similar to Tsukuba in Japan. And here for biology, you can see their A-level requirements there would be AAB. That's probably a little higher than we'd expect. But then it goes in and you can see, other things. They've got required subjects. Now, if you're applying for biology, hopefully you've studied biology in the last couple of years. A second science would be really nice. So if you studied biology and chemistry, that would be great. If you're going for social sciences, well, hopefully you've done, some social studies in the last couple of years. But, sometimes people haven't because, maybe their school doesn't offer, biology or social sciences at the highest levels. That sometimes happens, right? Or scheduling is impossible. So we don't have required subjects the way that Lancaster does here, but broadly speaking, if you're applying for engineering, let's say, we would you're definitely going to need to have math, and we'd probably expect you to have physics as well. If you're applying for biology, we'd expect you, broadly speaking, to have biology. It's not completely necessary, but generally speaking, right? And if you're applying for biology and you don't have biology, you're going to have to explain that in your personal statement, right? You're going to have to tell us like why you don't have, A-level biology, why you don't have, whatever is, that level in your academic system. They've got IELTS scores there for 6.5 overall, 5.5 in each component. We've got IELTS or TOEIC, TOEFL requirements listed in our application documents, so have a look through those. They've got IB, 35 points overall. Generally, I would say if you're above about 32 or something like that way, you'd probably have a fairly good shot for, biology or agriculture, geoscience, social sciences. But, that's always, the higher, the better. Okay. So this would be, broadly, what a comparable institution to us would be asking for. But as I say, you've done you're probably in the final year of your high school if you're here with us today. So, you've done that part of your education and you can't change your grades now. You can only submit what you've got. So grades is something which you probably shouldn't worry about too much because it's kind of beyond your control, right? Hopefully you've got good grades, but maybe they're a little bit weaker. If they're a little bit weaker, then the personal statement is your friend because it will let you explain, what was going on in your life. An example I gave in a previous webinar was about one application we received maybe it was last year or the year before, where it was a girl who, was a straight A student until the pandemic. And their grades suddenly went down and they were just getting like a C and D. And then the grades went back up again. And in their personal statement, they explained that their mother was sick. They had some, long-term illness. And when the student was at school, they could focus on their schoolwork and they got great grades. But during the lockdown period, when they were doing school online, then they were at home and they had to support their mother. And so their grades went down. But when they returned back to school, the grades went back up to an A again. That's the sort of thing that you can explain in your personal statement, because we don't want to, reject somebody because their mother is sick, because something, unfortunate happened. Bad things happen to everybody. And, your future shouldn't be determined by something that wasn't your fault. Okay. So your personal statement is a good opportunity for you to actually go out there and explain, your situation. And, if you do have problems, just be honest about it. And, we're also human. This is crazy idea, but, university faculty are also human. And, we do understand that sometimes, things happen which are just not your fault. So teacher recommendation, as I say, generally not super important unless it's terrible. And they do vary a lot by country and by region. So we can't really judge people that way, particularly. Personal statement, as I say, it's the #1 most important thing that you have to do. And it's your opportunity to show us who you are, to show us your personality, to show us your passion. Big key point. You must convince the reader that you are passionate about the subject. So sometimes what we'll get is a personal statement which says, I really love Japan. When I was a kid, I started reading, anime and manga, and I got into all the kawaii culture, and I love AKB48, and and I love eating takoyaki, and I go to the local Japan Matsuri, and I'm studying Japanese in my spare time, and I'm doing all these things, and da. And then at the bottom they say, oh yes, and by the way, I like biology. This is not convincing, okay? I am a biologist, okay? And if you want into my degree program, you have to convince me that you like biology. I don't care if you like Japan, actually, okay? Maybe a tiny little bit, okay? But basically, I want to know about your passion for biology because I'm passionate about biology. You know, this is not just my job, it's my life. I spent the last 20 years, studying, training, and being a biologist and teaching other people how to be scientists. So your examiners, the people who read your applications are people like me. They are scientists, they are engineers, they are social scientists, they are whatever the major is that you're going for, right? So you have to convince them that you are actually interested in the subject. That's the important point. The big advice that you get, obviously this is a Hollywood trope, but show, don't tell. So if you say something like, I am very passionate about biology, not very convincing, okay? But if you tell us why you are, or show us why you're passionate, right? Biology was your favorite subject at school. Okay, but why? What was it that you liked about it? What questions did you have? What was it that made you go, wow, I never thought about it this way. For me, when I was in high school, I remember my teacher telling us about genetics, right? Teaching us about genetics. And for me, it was realizing that, if you look at our bodies, and you look at our cells, then all of the lipids and the carbohydrates and all those, they're all the same. The thing that's different between us is proteins, right? It's genes. It's about how different hormones get expressed during development and all those kinds of things that actually leads us to be different. But most of our constituents, most of the things that make us, most of the stuff that makes our body is identical. It's just the expression of proteins at different times, different places, which leads us to be different. And when I'm 14, 15 years old, that blows my mind, okay? And I go, wow, that is cool. What is it that made you interested? What is it that got you excited? Maybe you're a social scientist and, you look around maybe the world right now, right? And you see, well, like there's the war in Ukraine, there's the whole Israel, Hamas thing kicking off. There's been COVID, and then there's been, recessions. And how does this affect societies, right? Over my lifetime, China has went from being, quite a poor country, to now being possibly the dominant economy on the planet, right? It's right up there. Its position in the world has changed incredibly. So has Japan's, by the way, over the same time frame. So maybe you're interested in these things. Tell us about that, right? What are the questions that you've got? What are the things that you kind of lie awake at night going, why is this way? Why does this work? That's showing, not telling. I like social sciences versus I'm really interested in the effect of the pandemic on Black communities in California, whatever, right? I'm really interested in how this affected developing communities in third world. You hear all about, like, over the COVID time, right? Everything you heard was about Western developed countries. How much did you hear about COVID coverage in Africa and Southeast Asia? Probably not very much, right? Do you think they were unaffected, or you just didn't hear about it? And if you didn't hear about it, why not? Right? How do we decide? How do news companies decide what you're going to hear, what you're not going to hear? There's lots of great questions out there. So think about whatever topic it is that you're interested in. As I say, it could be social sciences, could be sciences, could be engineering. Maybe you're an engineer. Maybe you watched Iron Man and you said to yourself, if we wanted to do something like that, how would we do it? Right? Maybe you look at electric cars and you say, well, you know what, they're cool technology, but are they really a solution for climate change? Right? There's lots and lots and lots of things that you can actually sink your teeth into and discuss in your personal statement. But just saying, I like biology, that's not enough, right? You need to actually show us that you are thinking about it, that your brain operates, okay? Just a list up like, oh, I like ecology, I like genetics. No, 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 no. Show us. Show me, okay? So as I mentioned, your examiners are professors in the subject. We're people who've spent 20, 30, maybe 40 years of our lives, thinking about this, studying this. We are very passionate. And we're looking for that passion in the people who are going to come and be our students as well. Okay. Now, if you look at our typical application pool, you're probably somewhere between 5 to 15 applicants per place, depending on the program. So what is it that makes you stand out? Right? If you're just another generic, I like biology, you're not going to make it, okay? You need to actually demonstrate to us that this is actually your real passion. So, yeah, that's why we're looking for that passion there, right? Is because we want to see who you are. We've only got a very small number of places available, and we want to make sure we're giving them to the people who, really, really want to be here, who really want to do something. That's important for us. So my big advice is be geeky, okay? Do not be shy to talk about your passions, okay? Provided it's subject-related passions, okay? What does your future look like? So we know that you're coming from high school. Now you're in your undergraduate, or you're coming to university for your undergraduate. You're 18 years old and you haven't worked everything out yet. I understand, right? We all understand. We've all been 18 years old and said to ourselves, okay, what now? Where am I going? What am I going to do in my life? Okay, I understand. My advice to you is to use your imagination. What do you think you'd like to do? What do you think are the important things for you? Not just, personally, but what do you want to achieve? For me, I'm really interested in how climate change is going to affect human population, and how we can use plants in order to try and solve some of those problems. That's what I'm interested in, right? So it's not about how does Louis get rich, okay? That would be nice, but it's never going to happen. It's more about like, what do I want to do? I'm going to die. Hopefully not really soon, but in a little while. I want the world after me to be better, right? That's what I want. So how am I going to make that happen? What do you want for your life? What do you want to achieve by the time you retire? Okay. Now, you're going to change your mind. after you get here and you start learning more things, you're going to realize, wow, oh, actually, I didn't know about that thing. And then you learn it. That's okay. Just use your imagination. Think, okay, I want to study biology. What am I going to do with that? I want to study engineering. What am I going to use that for? Are you going to use it for yourself? Are you going to use it for other people? What are you going to do? So you don't need to have everything figured out, right? Even if you do, you're going to change your mind. That's fine. But show us that you've thought about it. Show us that you have some idea about where a biology degree or a social science, whatever, right? Show us that you've actually thought about where that takes you, where you're going, okay? So we want to see that you've thought about it, even though you're almost certainly going to change direction. Okay. Program fit. At least for some courses, there are class lists available. Other programs, you can find faculty lists, and you can see the faculty members' research fields. And so the things that we research are pretty similar to the things that we teach, right? So if you come to, let's say, biology, we study a lot of things like genetics and genomics and proteomics. We do ecology and evolution and development. We do physiology and ecology. We study plants and animals and genomes, but we don't really do, let's say, human biology, right? We don't do medical stuff. So if you apply to biology and you say, I want to do medical science, it's going to be really tough to be accepted. If you apply to biology and you say, I want to work on food security for the future, I'm really interested in how genes build organisms. I'm really interested in multicellular organisms, right? Most organisms out there in the world are single cells, bacteria or protists, okay? Multicellular organisms like me, we're pretty rare, okay? Why be multicellular, right? So try to show us that, what you want to do actually matches up with what we actually offer, right? So again, like for social sciences, they've got some components of like law or economics and things like this, but they're really all about an integrated program. So if you say, I want to just do law, it's going to be hard because they don't offer a law degree, right? But if you say, I want to understand, broadly, then, about how societies work, you're going to do well. Okay, you're going to be okay. But try and look at what the program actually offers and make sure that what you are applying for is the same thing. Just the other day, there was an email I got from a person who really wants to do medical stuff, and I had to sort of say to them, well, that's not really what we offer. So you can apply if you like, but it'll be a challenge. So try to make sure that what you are applying for actually matches what we actually do. Okay. If they don't match, you don't have any chance, basically. So yeah, so if you apply to let's say biology because you want to do medicine, you have almost no chance. Okay, basically. If you apply to biology because you want to study about ecology or understand bird migration, whatever, you've got a great chance. Getting to know you. You can think about these applications a little bit like a matchmaking type thing. We want to get a feel for who you are, right? What sort of person are you? Are you a person who's gonna be able to come in and You're going to be self-motivated. You want to learn, you want to develop, you want to grow. Generally, most faculty hope that their research is going to benefit society. And so we want to see people who probably share the same sort of motivations as us, right? If you want to do something good for the world, I think most faculty are going to see that in a really positive light. So show us who you are as a person. It'll help us understand whether or not you're somebody that we would like to have, in our lab group, in our research groups. Again, this is just reiteration. Just think about your audience. Remember that the people who are judging your application are faculty, right? We generally see ourselves as researchers first, rather than teachers. So we're interested in research, and we're interested in discovering new things, learning more about the world. And if you have those same goals as us, you've got a great chance of success, right? If you just want to get a degree and then go be a bank manager, I don't necessarily need to give you a place, right? You can go to any university. But if you say you're really passionate about, doing science, engineering, whatever, right? Then, okay, this is, more interesting person to me, right? Somebody who is excited about the subject, is excited about learning new things, discovering new ideas. So why study in Japan, kind of as a final thing, generally, basically just not all that important to me, okay? First of all, I'm a biologist. Secondly, I happen to work at this university. And thirdly, this university happens to be in Japan. Now, it's totally fine to say, you like Japan. I would expect you to say that, like you're interested in the culture, you're interested in those things. But you've got 800 to 1,200 words, right? This should be a paragraph at the end. If it's 900 out of 1,200 words, you've got a big problem. Okay, you're not going to get accepted. This should be, 100 words, 150 words at the end, which says why you're choosing to study in Japan rather than choosing to study in another country, right? There's lots of countries where you could study. So focus on your subject, focus on your passion, your questions. And then, you can also say, and, I looked at your website, I really like your university. My dream is to study in Japan. I'm interested in the culture. I want to learn Japanese. That's fine. Okay, let's move on. So just as a final thing, financial plan. Then we'll have time for questions at the end. We try, generally speaking, to be as needs blind as possible. So when we're looking at your application, we do require you to do a financial plan, but we don't want to accept or reject anybody on the basis of that financial plan, right? We have to make sure that you have a plan in place, that it's realistic. The last thing that we want is for somebody to come here and then they get 1, 2, or 3 years into their program and then they have to quit because they didn't plan their finances, right? They ran out of money. They didn't get a scholarship. So we really need to avoid that situation. But if you're a bright, hardworking student, we want to be able to support you. We want to be able to make sure that we can get scholarships for you, or we can get tuition waivers, stuff like this. So we need you to basically be honest and tell us what your situation is. If you're going to be supported by your parents, that's most people, let us know, what your parents do, right? Some people will write a financial plan and they'll say, oh yes, my parents will support my expenses. And then that's it. And I'm sitting there going, but are your parents capable of supporting your expenses? Do your parents have stable jobs? Do you have savings? Do you have, like, I need more than just my parents will support me. That's not enough. Like, it's okay to say your parents will support you, but tell us a little bit more. Like, my father works in a company for the last 20 years and they've saved up, 10 million yen for my expenses. Whatever, right? It doesn't really matter, but tell us, just be open and honest. And if you need a little bit of support, then we'll try to do that. But as I say, largely this is kind of a technical requirement that we need to make sure that you are not going to starve to death, right? That you're not going to get in terrible trouble. Be honest about it. I was saying on a webinar a couple of weeks ago, we had one situation a couple of years ago where this guy, on their personal statement, they said, oh yeah, my family will support me, we've got this money, blah blah blah. And they came here and the first thing they sort of said was, oh, I've got no money, please give me a scholarship. And I was really angry at the guy because he basically lied to us. And as a university, we're responsible for their student visa. So if he, didn't have the money, if he didn't get scholarship, something like that way, if he has some problem, we have responsibility for him. And he lied to us. So at that point, I really felt like just saying no to the guy, but I guess I'm too kind-hearted. We managed to get him a scholarship. But if you do that, if you tell us, my family's got no financial problems, and then you come here and you say, oh, we've got no money, we're going to be really angry. Really angry. So don't do that, because that's not fair. And we might decide, like, you come here, you say, oh, we might just say no. That's entirely possible. If you tell us in advance, no problem. If you lie to us, problem. Okay? So just be honest about it. There's nothing to be worried about, nothing to be scared about. Just be open and honest about it, and we will try our best to support you. So I'm going to stop speaking or monologuing at this point.